This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Kid Naruto wore a mask to hide his emotions. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no time. Let's start the story.
Before speaking up, Kuruma turned to face Naruto and smiled at the newfound freedom that Naruto's choice had given him. When Karuma's figure began to fade, he stopped talking. Your time here is coming to an end as your body has now healed. You will be returning. I know you have many questions for me, but you have been unconscious for too long and there is someone special watching over you, waiting for you to wake up. However, before you depart, I shall also give you a gift. Once you wake up, the amethyst key you hold will no longer be a purple amethyst, but a maroon-colored one that has become a pendant. Do not let anyone see it until I have had time to explain what it represents and what it is for. That child could only become a true shinobi if he realized the raw pressure his hidden potential gives off. His mind is no longer blinded by the suppression of hate, but his will is too weak to accomplish it on its own because it has never known the strength that love can give. I'm hoping that he will experience that someday in the upcoming years. Only then will he be able to fulfill his dreams. Karuma's final thought before returning to a long, undisturbed sleep was, "Good luck, Kit." Though Kuruma is unaware of it, his hope might be nearer than he ever imagined. The room of Naruto. With a sudden shock, Naruto felt everything return to him, including his tense muscles, the bandages covering his body, and the sheets covering his bare back. Naruto opened his eyes quickly, and the first thing he saw somewhat surprised him. He has never seen a more exquisite pair of lavender pearl eyes, pupilless and perfect. To his dismay, Naruto heard a sound of surprise and saw the eyes he was admiring quickly retract. He turned to see who owned those eyes. Eep. Hinata gasped in shock. I'm S. Sorry, and Naruto, ID. Didn't mean T.ton. Invade Y. Your personal SP. Space L. Like T. That. Her face began to flush red with shame, and she was barely able to finish the sentence. Thou Naruto seemed to be deep in thought and never answered. Why didn't I realize until now that those eyes belonged to Hinata? Naruto was thinking. I bet it was because she always had her head tilted down. That has to be why, until he woke up and noticed a red-faced Hinata staring at him. Naruto could tell she was embarrassed by something, and the expression on her face made him feel a little sad. What is this sensation? Hinata. Naruto said, giving Hinata the kindest expression he could manage. Fortunately, she looked up at him with a look of surprise on her face before Naruto went on. I'm sorry if I had scared you when I woke up. Please forgive me, I had no idea you were so close at the time. Although Hinata did not express it, she was offended by the apology, not because of the apology itself, but rather because it implied that he still believed she was afraid of him rather than simply too shy to acknowledge her feelings for him. Hinata took a deep breath to calm herself before continuing, saying, It's alright, and Naruto, why you did N. Nothing wrong. She managed to get out without stuttering and gave herself a pat on the back. Actually, I am quite glad that you have finally woken up. First, I will get you some food and water so you can regain some of your strength. Then if you are well enough, I will lead you to Kakashi Sensei so he can evaluate if you are ready to train or not. Naruto attempted to argue and sit up before his stomach decided to betray his emotions and let out a loud, distinct growl. But I need to go train now. How long have you been out? I cannot sit around here when there is a job to do. After chuckling, Hinata firmly pushed Naruto back onto his back in bed. With a firm tone that prevented Naruto from arguing, Hinata said, I also need to give you a psyche evaluation as protocol dictates in Kurenai Sensei stresses before I can allow you to get up. Hinata enjoyed the feeling of caring for a conscious Naruto. After the door had closed, Hinata rushed off to take care of what needed to be done to get Naruto back on his feet as soon as possible. Naruto simply sighed and rolled over like a defiant little kid before Hinata left the room, laughing at Naruto's antics once more. With a sudden shock, Naruto felt everything return to him, including his tense muscles, the bandages covering his body, and the sheets covering his bare back. Naruto opened his eyes quickly, and the first thing he saw somewhat surprised him. He has never seen a more exquisite pair of lavender pearl eyes, pupilless and perfect. To his dismay, Naruto heard a sound of surprise and saw the eyes he was admiring quickly retract. He turned to see who owned those eyes. Eep. Hinata gasped in shock. I'm S. Sorry, and Naruto, ID. Didn't mean T.ton. Invade Y. Your personal SP. Space L. Like T. That. Her face began to flush red with shame, and she was barely able to finish the sentence. Thou Naruto seemed to be deep in thought and never answered. Hinata. Naruto said, giving Hinata the kindest expression he could manage. Fortunately, She looked up at him with a look of surprise on her face before Naruto went on. I'm sorry if I had scared you when I woke up. Please forgive me, I had no idea you were so close at the time. Eh? Hinata took a deep breath to calm herself before continuing, saying, It's alright Naruto, why you did N. Nothing wrong. She managed to get out without stuttering and gave herself a pat on the back. Actually, I am quite glad that you have finally woken up. First I will get you some food and water so you can regain some of your strength, then if you are well enough I will lead you to Kakashi Sensei so he can evaluate if you are ready to train or not. Naruto attempted to argue and sit up before his stomach decided to betray his emotions and let out a loud, distinct growl. But I need to go train now. How long have you been out? I cannot sit around here when there is a job to do. After chuckling, Hinata firmly pushed Naruto back onto his back in bed. With a firm tone that prevented Naruto from arguing, Hinata said, I also need to give you a psyche evaluation as protocol dictates in Kurenai. Sensei stresses before I can allow you to get up. Hinata enjoyed the feeling of caring for a conscious Naruto. After the door had closed, Hinata rushed off to take care of what needed to be done to get Naruto back on his feet as soon as possible. Naruto simply sighed and rolled over like a defiant little kid before Hinata left the room laughing at Naruto's antics once more. When Hinata heard Naruto scuffling in his room, followed by a loud thud and some swearing, she became frightened and began running up the stairs to Naruto's room. Hinata had been carrying a plate of food and some painkillers when she heard this. Naruto, are you alright? I'm coming in. Just as Naruto was about to object, Hinata opened the door. No, wait, however, the moment had passed. When Hinata walked by, Naruto was standing there looking shocked, his junk covered only by a hand towel. Before she could quickly put the food on the ground, turn, and move so Naruto was out of her line of sight, Hinata turned as red as a tomato and then pale as the blood in her face began to flow out of her nose like a raging waterfall. I'm so sorry, I will be downstairs if you need me for anything else. Hinata left and went downstairs to the kitchen before Naruto could reply. Before putting on his clothes and grabbing his food to eat, Naruto exclaimed, Woo! That was a close one, and really awkward. The kitchen downstairs. After making herself a cup of tea, Hinata sits down at the table and loses herself in her thoughts. Oh my god. God. Oh my god. God. I'm such a fool, and that was really embarrassing. Naruto must think I'm a creep now. How can I ever move on from this? Being in the same room as him is difficult enough, and he already believes that I despise him. What will I do? But my goodness, he was so hot. Hinata's thoughts were cut short when the door opened and an irritated Inari entered the house. He said, I'm tired of being your pack mule mom, why can't you just carry your own groceries? Before setting all of the groceries on the kitchen table and taking a seat across from Hinata. As all of that was going on, Hinata got to her feet, bowed respectfully, and greeted the returning couple. Welcome back Tsunami and Inari, I hope your shopping was successful. As Tsunami took out some pots to begin making dinner, he remarked, it was, at least while little was available. They had some fresh potatoes this week, which is nice and useful for stew. Is your friend awake yet, or is he still unconscious? Hinata blushed and said, yes, he woke up just over an hour ago, he should be eating and getting ready right about now, he should be down soon. Tsunami chuckled and said something wise. Did something happen that shouldn't have while I was gone? Eep. No. 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 N. Nothing happened at all. Hinata gave a pathetic lie, but Kakashi's arrival at the house mercifully prevented her from being questioned further. Sup? Kakashi halted when she noticed Tsunami attempting to control her laughter. Did I miss something? No, not at all Kakashi. So how did your training go? Replied Tsunami. Alright. Sakura has already got it down, but that's because her chakra reserves are so low and Sasuke is barely improving. He has no one to compete against, so he feels no real need to take the training seriously. I honestly wish Naruto was up and running again. They would push each other to improve. Hinata and Tsunami were both smiling and Hinata announced the news. With a little more assurance than usual, Hinata remarked, well, I guess it is your lucky day because Naruto woke up about an hour or two ago Kakashi. Sensei. I just need to give him a psych evaluation and you need to check on his physical state before he is ready to train again. With a sigh, Kakashi addressed Hinata in a dejected manner. Trust me when I say this, but Naruto won't need the psych evaluation. Inquiringly, Hinata furrowed her brows. Why? She finally inquired. When Tsunami saw that Kakashi was pleading with her to leave the room, she grabbed Inari by the arm and excused herself. They walked out, closing the door behind them, and Kakashi turned back to Hinata. Oh, I'm sorry I forgot something at the store. Come along Inari, you are coming with me. The reason why is because Naruto is no stranger to near-death experiences. Now before you ask, that is all I am sharing with you, as anything else needs to come from Naruto himself. Just don't push him about it and do not let him know that I shared that with you. He may take it the wrong way and things could turn out for the worst. Kakashi said while staring at Hinata with one eye in view. In the presence of Kakashi's critical gaze, Hinata could only nod in agreement. As he began to ascend the stairs, Kakashi said, "Well, now that is all settled, I will go check on Naruto and you can go train until dinner." "Yes, Kakashi. Sensei," Hinata replied, her head lowered and obviously worried about what had just been revealed to her. The room of Naruto sitting on his bed, Naruto gazed at his hand's palm. However, he wasn't merely staring at his hand because it contained the maroon colored amethyst pendant Kurama had assured him would be in his pocket. The pendant resembled the Uzumaki crest, though at the time Naruto could only identify it as the spiral design on the backs and shoulders of the Jonin and Chunin vests. The stone's white bedding gave the impression that the tips of foxtails were convergent at the center. Naruto made a mental note to try to find a string or chain to attach it to later because there is a hole in it. Naruto wondered in a daze, "What is this? Why is it so important? Why can no one see it?" Before answering, Naruto snapped out of his reverie and hurriedly tucked the pendant in his pocket. "You can come in, the door is unlocked." With a smile on his face, Kakashi looked through the door and then entered. "Sup? How are you feeling?" Naruto got up and threw his arms over his head, saying, "I'm feeling great, just want to get out of this room and train." After grinning at his student's excitement, Kakashi turned to face the window across from the door and answered. Staring at Naruto like a hawk, Kakashi said, "Now tell me. How are you really feeling? I can see something troubles you, it's in your eyes. They look scared and hurt." He witnessed everything, including the abrupt and minuscule clenching of his jaw and fists, the stiffening of his spine, and his decision to only look at the ground in order to conceal his face from his hair's shadows. He appeared to Kakashi to have given up and was prepared to die, but Naruto lifted his head and answered with a phony smile. Naruto tried to bluff his way out of the current situation by saying, "Hee, you're crazy, Kakashi. Sensei, why would I have anything to be worried about, yet alone sad about?" Kakashi simply pivoted to gaze out the window beside which he stood and pondered. Even after all this time, he still refuses to let anyone in because he is too closed off. What must I do to earn his trust? Kakashi simply sighed and let this one go too, realizing that if he tried to push the subject any further, it would not work. Before climbing up on the window sill and leaping out to a nearby tree branch to wait for Naruto, Kakashi said, "All right then, finish getting ready and join me outside for late night training. You have a lot to make up for after being injured for so long." With a sigh, Naruto grabbed a fresh shirt from his travel bag and threw it on before closing the door and heading to the gym. Long after midnight, in a nearby clearing, UUUGGGHHH, was Naruto's hump as he struck the ground on his back for the second time that evening. Damn, why is this so hard? Before his kunai slashes ceased to appear on the tree trunk, Naruto had only climbed 1/3 of the way up the tree. Naruto asked aloud to no one in particular, "What am I doing wrong?" Naruto lost himself in his thoughts as he sat down and gazed up the tree's trunk. Sasuke's marks extend more than half his tree, but Sakura has this figured out. Why am I unable to solve it now? The sound of leaves rustling in a nearby bush cut short Naruto's attempt at self-bashing. "I got nothing, I'm fucking useless." Naruto swiftly drew and threw 2 shuriken into the bush, believing it to be a threat, but it did nothing but frighten a squirrel out of hiding and cause it to run up a tree. "That's it!" Naruto cried as he charged at the tree with renewed energy. The results were amazing. He managed to climb more than 3/4 of the tree trunk before being blasted off and falling to the ground, landing on his head. Naruto said confidently and with a broad smile, "Well, that certainly made a difference. Now let me see how long it takes me to master this exercise now." He then reached higher up on the tree. He had no idea, though, that 2 compassionate individuals were gleefully observing him from the shadows as he advanced at such a startling rate. The morning after in Tezuna's house, after getting a decent night's sleep, Sasuke was the first to leave the rooms. Since he still shared a room with Kakashi, he was a little annoyed that he was up earlier than his sensei, but he chose to put that matter out of his mind for now. He decided to go check on Naruto to see if he was still asleep after noticing that no one had woken up yet as he descended the stairs. To his dismay, Naruto was nowhere to be found. It appeared to him that Naruto had not returned home the previous evening. With a thud, thump, thud, Sasuke banged on Sakura's and Hinata's door until both of them peered out from the back. Sakura, obviously irritated at having to answer the door, said, "What do you want, Sasuke?" It's still too early for us to be heading out for training. Sasuke genuinely expressed concern for his missing teammate by asking, have either of you seen Naruto? He is not in his room and he disappeared soon after dinner last night and I haven't seen the dope since. Just as perplexed and worried about the whereabouts and being of their missing teammates as Sasuke was, both girls gave a negative head nod in response. Before slamming the door in Sasuke's face to prepare to pursue him, Sakura hurriedly said, give us a minute to get ready and we can go look for him together. In a different clearing, dawn has arrived, and the land-anchored swallows and migratory gulls have started their morning food hunt while communicating their intentions to one another. These noises awaken Naruto to consciousness. He can smell the sweet scent of honeysuckles and turksnap lilies as he sits up, as well as the cool, salty morning breeze from the sea. Inhaling deeply, he stands up to assess his surroundings. Gazing up at the sky to gauge the time of day, he spots the top of the tallest tree in the clearing. He finished the exercise in a single night, and his kunai was slicing the tree's very top. Just before he began his ascent to retrieve his kunai from the top of the tree, Naruto thought, damn, I don't even remember doing it too. It took him less than 30 seconds to reach the summit and retrieve his kunai. When he reached the summit, he stopped to survey his surroundings and saw a young woman of his age walking by herself in the forest, presumably trying to gather herbs, as evidenced by the ginger and death claw in her straw basket. I think I should go talk to her because she's kind of cute, Naruto thought, but I've been out all night and I'm on a mission, so this is probably not the best time to try to flirt with women. He was never able to make up his mind because she had obviously found what she was searching for and was running quickly in his direction before stopping just below the tree he was standing on. She began to scan her surroundings in utter bewilderment. When Naruto realized she was searching for him, he made the decision to leap down from the top of the tree and say hello. With his broadest smile, Naruto said, "Morning, looking for someone?" He was obviously amused by the girl's sudden interest in him. "It's good to see you up and about. I was worried when I had crossed you and you wouldn't wake, even after I slapped you a couple times," she replied with a slight frown and a sigh. Naruto's perspiration lessened, and the unidentified girl gave a muted giggle. She was a short girl, barely 5 feet 2 inches, with jet black hair that framed her face and reached down to her waist, making her complexion appear much paler than it actually was. She had fair skin and deep brown eyes, and her sky-blue kimono, with its white trim, emphasized the curvature of her slim figure. The pink fill-in of a cherry tree in bloom was located on the lower left side of the dress, and its leaves appeared to have been blown across to the right side of the kimono. Naruto made the mental decision to learn more about the mystery girl after concluding that he had seen enough of her appearance. "My name is Naruto. Which is yours?" he inquired. She bowed her head and said, "Haku, I am called Haku. Are you feeling all right?" With a slightly worried expression on her face, she continued. "Never better." Holding his thumb up and grinning so broadly that it appeared as though his cheeks were showing all of his teeth, Naruto exclaimed in a shy manner. "So what is a ninja like yourself doing asleep and passed out on the ground in the middle of wave country?" Haku asked, laughing at his arrogant display. Then she asked. As he began to lean against a nearby tree, Naruto's hair cast a shadow over his eyes, giving him an eerie demeanor. He concluded, "I'm trying to get stronger, strong enough so those around me have no choice to acknowledge my existence." His eyes were dark and distant. But before he could ask a question, Haku said, "That is something that I cannot comprehend," shaking her head negatively. "Well, since you are all right, I will go now. I have someone at home who demands my attention." Haku then began to move in the direction of the surrounding foliage, stopping just before she crossed the threshold and turning to face Naruto. "I don't understand why you would want to get stronger if you don't have someone precious to protect." She used a chakra-infused leap to disappear behind the foliage after saying, as in, being strong has no purpose if you do not have someone or something in need of that strength. At first, Naruto didn't understand the question's context and was a little surprised by Haku's ability to use chakra. He yelled at her to stop, but it didn't work because once he arrived at the foliage Haku had used to escape, she was nowhere to be found. "Damn it!" As he recognized the enigmatic Haku, Naruto shouted into the sky, "I could have been killed. How could I have been so careless? I'm such a damn fool." Naruto sat cross-legged at the base of a tree that was covered in kunai slashes. From another perspective, Naruto may have been frozen in time as he stared blankly at the dandelions and clovers among the grass for what seemed like hours, wondering, was all my training for nothing if I couldn't even tell an enemy from a friend? "Hinata, is Naruto locked up yet?" While they were all jumping from tree to tree, Sasuke asked. "I finally found his chakra signature, but it is running wild," Hinata yelled to Sakura and Sasuke as she abruptly made a sharp left turn. In the mass of chakra being released, I can't even see his body. All three of them flinched as a wave of Naruto's uncontrollable chakra struck them as they turned to follow Hinata's instructions. What was that? Sakura asked, looking a little perplexed. As he emerged behind the three motionless genin, Kakashi said, I think that was Naruto's chakra running wild after falling unconscious. The three of them stared back at him in disbelief, and he boredly replied, Why are you looking at me? Go and get him before he hurts himself further. Hinata, Sakura, and Sasuke then hurried off to find Naruto unconscious beneath the tree where he had finished his tree-walking training. Before carrying Naruto's lifeless body back to Tsunami's house, Sasuke angrily remarked, Well, looks like the dope finished his training and then passed out. Hinata, is Naruto locked up yet? While they were all jumping from tree to tree, Sasuke asked. I finally found his chakra signature, but it is running wild, Hinata yelled to Sakura and Sasuke as she abruptly made a sharp left turn. In the mass of chakra being released, I can't even see his body. All three of them flinched as a wave of Naruto's uncontrollable chakra struck them as they turned to follow Hinata's instructions. What was that? Sakura asked, looking a little perplexed. As he emerged behind the three motionless genin, Kakashi said, I think that was Naruto's chakra running wild after falling unconscious. The three of them stared back at him in disbelief, and he boredly replied, Why are you looking at me? Go and get him before he hurts himself further. Hinata, Sakura, and Sasuke then hurried off to find Naruto unconscious beneath the tree where he had finished his tree-walking training. Before carrying Naruto's lifeless body back to Tsunami's house, Sasuke angrily remarked, Well, looks like the dope finished his training and then passed out. Inside the mindscape of Naruto. Drip. 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 Naruto was roused from his unconscious sleep by the sound of water hitting water in the grand sewer. Why does it feel like the broadside of Zabuza's blade just struck me in the head? Naruto rubbed the back of his head and asked out loud. It is past time for you to visit, Kit. As Naruto became conscious of his surroundings, Kurama remarked sarcastically, I was starting to think that you were not worth my time if you can't even handle your life free of hate and stay conscious. Despite being in his mindscape and having no physical ailments, Naruto got up and stretched his limbs. All right, so tell me why my chakra went out of control and I passed out. With a hint of irritation in his voice, Naruto demanded. Kurama simply laughed once more before nodding his head and motioning for Naruto to sit at the base of his cage. Naruto obeyed and sat on the flooded floor about 10 meters away from the base of the cage so he could look at the enormous fox evenly. Before Naruto could ask another question, Kurama said, The reason you lost control of your chakra kid was due to the aftereffect of breaking your contract you signed with me. You became hateful. But I believed that hate was no longer a part of me. Are you implying that the 6 hours of suffering I endured was in vain? Don't say anything. Naruto started to fume and rattle off about the 6 hours of pain he felt and how it was for naught. How Kurama lied to him about no longer being able to hate. Also whether or not holding onto the damn stone would matter or not. Once he was done, Naruto took several deep breaths to compose himself and got ready to receive Kurama's counter-arguments to his violent outburst. I was under the assumption that you understood that a human being can never truly be without hatred. I was able to seal your hatred of other people with the contract, which is a simple task but requires emotional self-control to remain sealed. A fundamental human emotion cannot be totally eliminated from your heart by any seal, jutsu, or even divine power, Kit. So allow me to explain what happened. Before Kurama could say anything more, Naruto raised his hand and asked a question, acting as though he was in an academy class and didn't understand what had just been said. What is meant by elucidate? Kurama just stared at Naruto in disbelief after saying. I'm not sure how to compare you right now, Kit, but at times you're sharper than a blade and at other times you're denser than rock. You sit there all day flapping your lips without saying anything sensible, so perhaps it's a fish. Ha ha ha. Kurama jested as Naruto just sat on the ground and pouted rather than retorting because he didn't want to give the damn fox any more teasing material. Ha. Ha ha. Hee. All right. With a hint of bewilderment on his face, Naruto nodded in understanding. I'm good now. To answer your question, to elucidate means to explain further than what you were contextually provided. Someone really needs to get this kid a quality education, Kurama thought sadly before returning his focus to Naruto to finally explain why he lost control of his chakra. All right, Kit. Listen carefully now, and wait until I've finished explaining things before you ask questions. Naruto nodded in comprehension. Kit. You began to hate, which is why you lost control of your chakra. You developed the worst kind of hatred toward yourself. It causes you to lose sight of all the wonderful things in your life. The contract can help you avoid hating other people, but it is your responsibility to avoid hating yourself, or you will completely lose your ability to use and shape chakra. The contract's only warning was that you would lose control over your chakra. After finishing, Kurama put his head on the ground and stared at Naruto, waiting for him to acknowledge him in some way, but he sat there lost in thought. If you come to hate yourself again, you will no longer be able to pursue the path of a ninja anymore. I get it, but how can I do that? Just how do I control all of my emotions? Naruto asked, resting his head on his fist and elbow on his knee. For the love of Kami, this is me. Before the great fox sat a child who is so stubborn that he is willing to do anything to gain the strength needed to move forward as a ninja. Naruto looked Kurama square in the eyes with an interest and willingness to learn that he had never seen from a human before. I'm not so dense that I don't realize that I live my life off of my emotions. Kid, you just need to control your hatred of both yourself and other people. You still seemed perplexed. Kurama went on, it's still okay to let yourself act on your anger, joy, and even love. You just can't let yourself come to hate. As for managing your hatred, just ask your sensei for some mediation techniques, then you can come see whenever you need assistance with your emotions or if you just need to get away. Naruto rose from his seat and walked slowly toward the grandiose door he had once entered from. After about 35 seconds, Naruto turned around and remarked, you know, for a demon who is known for his hatred of humans, you're pretty damn considerate. With his trademark toothy grin, he opened the door and left without looking back. Now this damn brat chooses to be sentimental. Kurama sneered and retreated to the back of his cage to sleep until the brat returned. I should have just eaten him instead of following the damn contract, he said. Inside the home of Tazuna, as our protagonist awakens from his unconscious slumber, heavy eyelids finally lift the dark veil from his view, registering the rays of light that the dust particles dance in as a slight afternoon breeze prevents them from falling still against the oak ceiling as the backdrop. Naruto grunted, rubbed his eyes, and turned to his side to get a sense of his surroundings. His head is foggy and his eyes are blurry, so he slowly sits up and takes a few deep breaths as his senses return to normal. Damn, this is familiar, he thought as he saw Hinata sleeping in the chair next to his bed, her head resting next to his knees. She's so adorable when she is asleep like that. Naruto smiled as he thought about his female companion. Hinata woke up while Naruto was deep in thought, but she remained motionless and silent, choosing instead to gaze at him as he was obviously preoccupied. To her astonishment, Naruto ran his hand through her hair, and she began to argue with herself. Oh my god, don't faint, don't faint, don't faint, damn it. Naruto is running his hand through your hair and it feels amazing. However, after about 2 minutes, Naruto abruptly took his hand off her hair and carefully exited the bed so as not to wake her. After putting on his kill.me orange jacket and stretching his arms over his head, Naruto turned back to the pretend sleeping Hinata, grinned, and walked out of the room, asking himself, why did I just do that? After the door closed, Hinata waited for a few minutes before deciding to get up and stretch out her arms, legs, and back because she had been sleeping in a very uncomfortable position, hunched over the bed, worrying about Naruto and his mysterious condition. What was that pulse of chakra? Why was Naruto out cold? Sure, he was dirty and I could see that he was training, but he was unconscious without so much as a bruise or scrape on his body. How long was he training? What was he doing to get to that point? Hinata said to herself as she left the room, blushing slightly as she started to remember what it was like to have Naruto play with her hair. Within the kitchen, as Naruto came out of the top of the stairway, Sasuke remarked, well, at least you're not out for several days this time, dope. When Kakashi decided to come from the front door and whack Naruto upside the head, knocking him out of the chair, Naruto snapped back, morning to you to sunshine, and sat down at the table across from Sasuke. He leaned back in his chair, put his feet up on the chair next to him, and put his hands behind his head. This position lasted for 5 seconds. As Sakura and Sasuke chuckled behind their hands across the table, Naruto exclaimed in confusion. Kakashi replied cunningly, just wanted your feet out of Hinata's seat, before taking the seat that Naruto had previously occupied. When Hinata came down the stairs, Naruto's cheeks, unbeknownst to everyone, started to turn slightly pink as his mind instantly reminded him of what he had done this morning. When Tsunami brought out that morning's breakfast, everyone greeted each other and started eating. Old bastard, was the last thing Naruto said before being hit upside the head once more. So, Naruto, would you mind explaining how you woke up and then fell back into unconsciousness? Kakashi asked, looking directly at the boy, but Naruto was ready because he had already anticipated being questioned by his teammates and sensei. Everyone appeared to be duped, with the exception of Kakashi, who simply continued to stare at Naruto intently. Well, I was attempting to create a new version of the shadow clone, but it backfired and blew up in my face, knocking me out, he replied, rubbing the back of his head and wearing the most ridiculous looking smile he could manage. Neither Tazuna nor Tsunami understood the significance or folly of what Naruto simply confessed to doing, but they could tell it wasn't a good thing. Baka was said by both Sakura and Sasuke as their faces palmed themselves and Hinata had to cover her mouth to try to stop her uncontrollable giggling. Kakashi then started reprimanding Naruto. I was aware of your lack of intelligence, Naruto, but to be so foolish. For that, I should send you back to the academy. Do you even know what it takes to try to make or alter a jutsu? Kakashi paused and let that sink in. Naruto, acting the part, shamefully hung his head in an attempt to hide his facial features. In fact, he hated having to do this, but right now he is going to place his faith in Kurama and play out the lie. Look. It's amazing that you even considered altering the shadow clone jutsu, Naruto, but doing so could have been fatal. How do you think that would have affected the mission or your teammates? Kakashi concluded, aware that the sentimental person who puts others before himself would find that point particularly poignant. Without looking up, Naruto answered incoherently, yes, Kakashi. Sensei. He then got up from his chair, bowed to Tsunami in appreciation for the food, and left the house without eating or saying anything more. He wasn't seen until late into dinner the next evening, when he had a different aura surrounding him. 3 days have gone by, but Team 7 and Hinata haven't seen much of Naruto since that morning when Kakashi reprimanded him. He only showed up for the second half of meals after everyone had almost finished and gone their separate ways. His teammates only knew that he was training because Kakashi was reticent and they were too busy to go find out for themselves. Sakura and Hinata were stuck in a cycle of tree walking with Sasuke, who still hadn't figured out how much chakra to use, and Sasuke was too exhausted to bother looking for his teammate to get an answer when they returned home. However, this evening was different, as Naruto arrived at Tazuna's house before anyone else did, much to Sasuke's surprise as he returned early because he had finally mastered, or at least figured out, tree walking. Hey, awesome. Why have you returned so early? Sasuke sarcastically inquired. Did you fail your covert training? I bet you can't even begin to push chakra to your feet, so Kakashi-sensei gave you some other training to do just so you have the bare essentials to be a ninja. Sasuke thought to himself, no matter how hard I push, something just seems off. Naruto responded by flipping him the bird. When Kakashi suddenly showed up and knocked both boys on the top of their heads, he said, don't you think your actions towards each other are a little too hostile for teammates? And Naruto? Kakashi went on. Don't you think it is appropriate to share with your teammates what training you have been doing so they have an idea of what your skill level is and what kind of teamwork you are capable of? Kakashi asked Naruto. You're right, Kakashi-sensei, I apologize, I'll share what I have been doing for the last 4 days, but can it wait till dinner because I don't want to repeat myself multiple times? Naruto asked with the biggest smile he could muster, resembling a child pleading with his mother for a piece of candy at the store, before turning around and grinning at Sasuke. Ha, as if I trust you guys with my real work. Hell, Naruto thought eerily, Kakashi-sensei doesn't even know the real purpose of my training. Before vanishing into a whirlwind of leaves, Kakashi said, I can agree to that. Damn it, sensei, he exclaimed, followed by Naruto and Sasuke. Doesn't he think about who has to clean up these damn leaves after he shunshins out of a building? Sasuke's remarks. Before he and Sasuke separate to find a broom and tidy up their sensei's leaf mess, Naruto responds, I just want to know where they freaking come from. That same evening, in the kitchen with the exception of Inari, who was currently in his room, everyone was seated at the table and eating. Kakashi coughed and turned to face Naruto because this was the ideal chance for him to tell his teammates what he had been doing for the past few days. After recognizing the gesture, Naruto and his fellow genin started talking. So I guess now is a good time to share with you guys what I have been doing these last couple of days, Naruto began. Sakura nearly screamed, yay! About time you did, as she screamed out her obvious rage at Naruto while Hinata gazed at him expectantly. You left every morning before anyone got up and disappeared to Kami knows where, and only came back when everyone was about to go to bed or when we were finishing our meals. Thus leaving us to complete our mission without you. Sakura went on. To Naruto's surprise, Hinata intervened to defend him just as she was about to vent even more. I'm sure Naruto had his reasons for disappearing to go train, and besides Sasuke didn't help with the mission either as he couldn't complete the tree walking exercise, to which Naruto earns my credit because he finished the exercise in one night. Hinata realized right away that she had said too much when Sakura's jaw dropped to the table with a thud and Sasuke began to choke on the tea he was drinking before spitting it out. Under his black face mask, Kakashi was smiling amusedly the entire time. The dope did what? Sasuke practically ordered Hinata to say it again. Naruto began to chuckle uncontrollably at his teammates' nearly stunned looks, which mirrored those of those who had just witnessed Kakashi making out with another man. Naruto may appear happy on the outside, but his mind is in disarray. How is she aware of that? Kakashi-sensei must have known about my deception if she is aware of it. What else is that bastard with white hair aware of? Is it possible that he is aware of my communication with the fox? The list of questions Naruto had continued until Sasuke interrupted him to speak. He thought to Naruto, "How did you do it, dope? I just can't believe it." As Kakashi already figured out how Naruto of all people figured it out so quickly, Naruto started, and his three teammates raised quizzical expressions. Well, to be honest, it was just dumb luck by observation. Naruto went on, after only reaching half the height you had achieved at the time, Sasuke, which was only about a quarter of the tree, I ended up watching the local squirrels climb up the nearby trees. It was at this point I noticed that despite having claws they always kept their feet flat to the tree's trunk. I assumed this is for balance, so I guess applying the same method to tree climbing would work. Naruto stopped to observe the reactions of everyone. Naruto assumed that Hinata was upset about something and didn't want to look at him at the moment because she had a red flush, pulled her hood over her head, and covered her face with her hands out of embarrassment. As he came to this conclusion, he felt a warmth in his chest vanish. There was a look of confusion on Sakura's face. Every time she saw something red, it seemed as though someone had informed her that it was actually blue. He felt a little more proud of himself for having fooled the omniscient Sakura. Sasuke and Naruto's sensei Kakashi, meanwhile, maintained expressionless faces that revealed nothing of their innermost thoughts. Like real ninjas, Naruto pondered. Naruto went on with his explanation at this point. Naruto concluded by scratching the back of his head and once more observing the expressions of his fellow ninja, which stayed the same. So I decided to equally distribute a little bit of chakra across my entire foot, and as luck would have it I was able to reach the top of the tree on my first try. Before Sasuke could contest its veracity and attempt to deny Naruto his moment in the spotlight, Sakura began. I can see that and believe that because you have unnaturally stupid luck when it comes to such things, Naruto. As we have experienced in the past with our D-ranked missions. Sakura started questioning Hinata, saying, "But what I can't understand is how did you know about this and why did you not tell us?" Under Naruto's interested gaze, Hinata stumbled, fearing the worst. Hinata winced as she said, W. Well, I was W.war. About N Naruto as he had J. Just recovered from H. His previous in.in. Injuries soif. F. Followed him to .tom. Make sure he was going to B.bel, alright. Sakura's piercing gaze had subsided, allowing Hinata to unwind and complete her explanation without incident. Hinata was able to finish objectively and effectively, making Sakura stand down as she felt Naruto's gaze shift to a friendlier, more reassuring one. As for why I didn't share this fact with you, is because it was not my place to share it. Naruto is my ally and I trust H has his reasons for not telling anyone what he has accomplished. As Hinata met Naruto's eyes directly, the feeling of warmth returned to his chest. Since their conversation had veered off course, Kakashi felt compelled to intervene and put an end to the argument. There was no room for disagreement among the genin when Kakashi said, "Hey. That's enough. I can confirm everything both Hinata and Naruto have said is true, but that is unimportant. We were supposed to discuss Naruto's individual training over these last 4 days and what he has accomplished." At this point, Inari came into the room and took a seat beside his mother to eat. Inari asked, "What does it matter?" Tsunami turned to her child in disbelief and said, "Inari, that is just rude. Apologize right now." "Why?" Inari retorted angrily. All of the ninja in attendance, with the exception of Naruto, gave him curious looks. Why does it matter what he has accomplished? No matter how hard he trains, how hard you fight, he will lose to Gato, all because Kami has forsaken us, and these people here are not heroes. They are not here to save us. They're here just to complete their mission and get their pay, Inari replied. Naruto spoke up before anyone could reply, saying something that would stay with Inari forever. "You're right, kid, we are not heroes, we are ninja. We bear the burden of doing what others cannot regardless of consequences. We have damned ourselves from childhood because we choose a path where we take lives to protect the lives we hold dear, but no matter how righteous it may seem, we are still sinners because we kill. We take lives and must be prepared to have ours taken in turn. So we cannot be the heroes of this village or anywhere for a matter of fact. We were all damned from the start, and we do it over and over so those who don't have the strength to carry this sinful burden of kill or be killed can live life without the suffering caused by it, so they can live happy and free. If you really want a hero, look no further than your grandfather and everything he has sacrificed to save this land. That is something more heroic than any of us ninja could ever accomplish. In fact, that is something more heroic than I could ever dream of accomplishing. However, don't ever compare us to bandits who only care for coin because we are still honorable and will not lower ourselves to such a level. Naruto decided to not continue his rant any longer as everyone looked at him in a stupor as no one, not even Kakashi, had expected this rambunctious brash-headed boy they all thought they knew to speak as if he has lived many lives. Naruto felt compelled to excuse himself after noticing their faces, especially Inari's, which was crying. Before opening the door to leave the house, he got up from his chair and bowed to Tsunami for the meal. He stopped as he stepped outside and looked at his sensei. Before Kakashi could reply, Naruto concluded and hurried out the door to head to the trees. Sensei, please share with my teammates what I have been doing for training as I am no longer in the mood and it is best to tell them tonight. It was quiet, with a cool chill riding the wind and a slow breeze that brushed past the leaves. The shore was close enough to hear the sound of the waves breaking and the local birds hunting for their evening meal. Naruto thought back on what he had just said in this tree-filled clearing where the grass was ankle-high and dotted with white lilies. Naruto had been meditating. Naruto was trying to enter his mindscape in order to escape the world and reflect while he sat cross-legged and held the dragon seal in the center of the clearing where the grass had grown matted from his training. Inhaling deeply, he immersed himself. He awoke to find himself in a dojo, a plain rectangular structure measuring 30 feet, 9.1 meters, by 85 feet, 25.9 meters. The interior's wooden walls and floors gave it the appearance of a traditional kendo dojo. Since it was midday, the sun was shining straight into the canyon, making it very bright and visible. Naruto got up, unfazed by the change in scenery, and opened the sliding door to be met by a circular canyon in the middle of a rising mountain that peaked several miles into the air vertically. Naruto looked around and saw a pond to his left with lily pads floating calmly on top and a tiny stream of water entering from a spout on the mountainside. A tiny group of birch trees with white trunks that seemed unaffected by time stood behind the dojo. The elaborate mahogany door that Naruto had previously used to access his demon Kurama's prison, which was carved out of the cliff's side, stood in front of him. Last but not least, a huge cavern to his right still had the paper seal on it and the same red, rusted bars that held the demon at the entrance. Naruto yells and moves a short distance in the direction of the cave. Naruto kept moving in the direction of the cave and sat down directly in front of the bars until he heard back. "Hey you stupid fox. Just because I changed the scenery doesn't mean you can ignore me when I visit," he exclaimed. As a slightly larger than normal fox emerged from the cave's shadows, the weaker Kurama growled, "You damned brat, you just left, why are you back already?" The now cute demon fox approached the bars and slipped through to sit directly in front of Naruto on his haunches. "And turn me back to my original size, you fucking kid, before I walk out of this cage and tear your guts out," he demanded. Naruto joked, "But I think you look adorable like that. And you know you have to give up your powers to leave the cage so you can't kill me as you are now." Naruto went on, but Kurama's probing gaze caused him to look sadly down at the ground. He shared his recollections of what happened in Tezuna's home rather than discussing the recent events. He recently acquired the ability to do this with his resident fox. Kurama said, "Kit, for you to recite one of my teachings to you so early on into our lessons is in fact incredible. Don't be discouraged because it shows how much you have improved and matured in such a short time." Kurama allowed Naruto to pet his head while he was speaking, and Kurama will never admit he likes it, but his mind was elsewhere. Kurama had nothing else to offer the lost boy he saw in front of him. It's amazing how fast the kid has absorbed everything I've taught him and how well he understands it. Kurama was horrified by this realization because he could not comprehend the horror of what people could do to one another. "I just wanted to give the kid an education, but for this little amount of teaching to have this drastic of an effect, I really want to know how sabotaged he was in school." In actuality, Naruto has been trained by Kurama to learn how to enter his mindscape through meditation and then to have the mental fortitude to control it as he pleases. Kurama believed that because the kid had excellent instincts, Naruto's lack of a good education was seriously impeding him. Kurama wanted to develop and enhance Naruto's survival skills by teaching him about philosophy, the theology of weapons, battle tactics, and survival techniques. All of this was carried out within Naruto's mindscape. This had a significant impact on Naruto's capacity to learn since Kurama could impart years' worth of knowledge to him in a single day rather than attempting to teach him orally and have him absorb it gradually. Before anyone woke up in the morning, Kurama would impart 2 to 3 years of knowledge on a particular topic. Naruto would then meditate in his mindscape for the remainder of the day in order to assimilate all of the information he had been given. Because they had less than a week to get ready for Zabuza's return, Kurama realized that time was not on their side. This allowed his learning speed to reach inhuman levels, But these speeds were a double-edged sword that could have backfired and caused Naruto to go brain dead. They were therefore prepared to take the risk. Naruto calmed himself from his inner turmoil by taking a deep breath. The embodiment of hatred heard Naruto say, "All right, Fur Ball, I think it's time to get some training in." Naruto's conviction strengthened. Naruto went on, "I want you to teach me some taijutsu." After giving it some thought, Kurama found the ideal look for Naruto. Kurama paused to check on Naruto. "Listen up, kid. What I am about to teach you is a style developed by my father, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, or as you would know him from our lessons, the Sage of the Six Paths," Kurama said. The fox was delighted to have Naruto's complete focus. Naruto complied and sat motionless as the information began to take shape in his head. "It is very special and I mean very, few people could ever use this style. Its name is Ganho no Kitsune style, sturdy fox style. It combines defense with agility. Now hold still while I show you the first few katas." After receiving all of the Ganho no Kitsune style's basic forms and katas, Naruto stood up, extended his arms, and started to approach the mahogany doors after a minute or so. As he exited his mindscape through the door, Naruto asked the fox rhetorically, "You're going to keep an eye out and make sure I do it right Furball?" When the boy could no longer hear him, Kurama retorted, "Damn right you brat, because you would never learn otherwise." Naruto has been diligently honing his new taijutsu technique well into the night. Naruto was standing in the starting stance, getting a sense of how he could move in this pose, and it came naturally to the blonde prankster, almost as if it were made for him. Naruto's stance resembled that of a fencer, with his right leg slightly to the right and behind him, his left leg and foot facing forward directly in front of him, and his right foot perpendicular to his waist. This gave his body a very stable base from which he could move quickly and aggressively forward or defend himself from attacks with a strong and stationary brace. While Naruto's right arm was held straight back at an upward angle of roughly 30 degrees, causing his chest to slightly lean forward, his left arm was held out in front of his body at chest height and perfectly vertical to the ground. Although the stance was odd in and of itself, what transpired revealed how truly miraculous it was. Naruto appeared to have just thrown off his own center of balance as he took a long lung step with his left toward the tree he was aiming for. That was not the case, though, because as Naruto began to fall forward, he threw his left arm, which had been in front of him up until that point, behind him. This allowed Naruto to kick off with his left foot, travel a few centimeters off the ground, and rotate in mid-air before bringing his right hand in mid-rotation. Naruto's fist struck the tree with a diameter of easily over 40 inches, 1.016 meters, as he stomped his right foot down and pushed himself upward for an uppercut-like move that stopped his rotation using the momentum of his full arm cocked, rotation of his spin, and second foothold to change directions. The tree never stood a chance because it was totally destroyed where Naruto struck it. The pressure was distributed throughout the tree's trunk, causing quarter-inch, 0.635 cm cracks to appear all over as the tree collapsed under its own lost strength. Naruto grinned as he examined his useful work. Transferring energy into your own attacks was the foundation of the style. Naruto saw that the initial katas had many intricate and challenging rotations, and as a result, he realized that if he did not become proficient in them before going on to the more difficult maneuvers, he might run into trouble. To put it simply, he needed to be much faster in order for the style to work. Kurama. Sensei. Hello, I want to ask you a question, Naruto reflected in his mental landscape. Kurama said cynically, "Oh, now the bratty kid treats his great teacher with respect. I already know your question, kid. You want to know how to get faster and soon because of Zabuza's impending threat." Kurama received a mental nod from Naruto to proceed. Before proceeding, Kurama inhaled deeply. For a brief moment, Naruto's expression was one of frustration before he abruptly changed course and turned around. "Kid, to get to the speed required to use this taijutsu efficiently, it would take months of gravity training paired with extreme physical training as well. We clearly don't have the time for it, so why don't you just focus on what you can do and perfect it?" More for himself than for Kurama, who was sitting quietly watching his blonde, boisterous container, Naruto declared, "Okay, then no time pouting about what can't be helped. Let's get back to work." Kurama thought to himself, "I swear this brat is bipolar." He laughed a little and went back to his cage to sleep. The next morning, Naruto would keep practicing until the sun rose. At Tazuna's house, in the meantime, "Sensei, please share with my teammates what I have been doing for training, as I am no longer in the mood and it is best to tell them tonight." The once dim-witted blonde casually barked out the most prophetic thing any of the young ninjas had ever heard in their lives, and everyone sat in silence for a moment. While everyone was staring at each other for answers, Inari simply got up, turned to face the ground, and walked back up the stairs he had only briefly descended minutes earlier. Eventually, everyone's eyes locked on him as he ascended each step slowly. Tsunami tried to ease the quiet tension that pervaded the room after he eventually vanished to the second floor of the house. She smiled and asked, "Would anyone like some pie for dessert?" drawing everyone's attention away from their thoughts. Tazuna was the first to respond, and her face brightened at the idea of homemade pie. "Yes, sweetheart, I won't mind a piece." Kakashi, who was unaffected by Naruto's outburst, said, "I'll have one as well." Me2, please, Hinata said, her smile apprehensive as she continued to take in the situation. Sakura and Sasuke both graciously turned down Tsunami's modest dessert offer. Ahem. Kakashi cleared his throat to attract the attention of the remaining genin. With a cheerful smile, Kakashi said, "That ended well, I guess. I probably should do as Naruto has asked and fill you in on his training." He then took a moment to see who was paying attention, and to his surprise, everyone was. Inari's sniffling at the very top of the stairs, just out of everyone's view, Tsunami plating the pie much more slowly than usual to avoid making too much noise, and Tazuna, who was attempting to look uninterested by using a knife to clean his fingernails. Naruto has been spending the last week mediating and training to develop a brand new fighting style. Or so he told me. He has done this all in secret as he has somehow managed to find a spot where I cannot even find him. Kakashi began in a monotone, ignoring his team's shocked looks and Tazuna's family's perplexed stares. "Wait. How the hell does the dope of all people manage to hide from you? A freaking Jonin from Konohagakure?" Sasuke yelled in confusion. "He is Naruto. He couldn't even manage to graduate from the academy normally, so how the hell does he hide from you?" concluded Sasuke. With the exception of Hinata, everyone in the room gave Kakashi even more perplexed looks as he simply laughed in response. Sakura went on, "Why is that so funny, Kakashi? Sensei? It's a valid question, is it not?" Sasuke nodded in agreement. As his two students became increasingly agitated, Kakashi added jokingly, "Why don't you ask Hinata? She is the only one who does not seem surprised by this." Instead of asking, Sasuke firmly declared, "Fine. Hinata, why is it the dope can hide from Kakashi here and not be found?" Then Hinata said, Well you see, Naruto has been hiding from the Anbu for years. After every prank they would give chase, and for as long as I can remember the only people who could ever find him were Iruka Sensei and the Hokage, and I think that is more of him letting them find him rather than them actually finding Naruto. Even my father could not find Naruto when he would run away after playing a prank on our house. Hold." Hinata watched Sakura's and Sasuke's jaws drop closer to the ground with each statement. Sakura had to repeat in shock, "Even your father, the Hyuga clan head, could not find Naruto?" Hinata simply confirmed by nodding her head. By this time, Tazuna hadn't even touched his piece because he was too preoccupied listening to the young genin. Tsunami had returned to the kitchen to put the pie away before it spoiled from being out too long, and Kakashi had settled down to eat his pie while the genin chatted among themselves. "Why is that such a big deal?" Tazuna finally interrupted, unable to keep up with the conversation and the significance of everything that was being discussed. "Because Tazuna Sama, Hinata's father, is considered to be the holder of the most powerful Byakugan, the all-seeing Kekkei Genkai. It's a bloodline limit that allows the users to see chakra pathways and see through objects." Sakura started out, and the fact that Naruto is able to hide from him is nothing short of incredible, if not just short of impossible. Tazuna's eyes widened in disbelief. Kakashi started laughing once more. With a hint of reprimand, Kakashi remarked, "There is nothing incredible about it, and you would understand that if you got to know your teammates better, as clearly Hinata knows more about Naruto than both of you combined." When the two young genin realized the remark was directed at them, they turned to the ground in embarrassment. Sakura and Sasuke both became aware of how little they knew about their comrade at this point. For as long as they could remember, he had lived alone rather than in an orphanage, was the dope in the academy, and enjoyed pulling practical jokes. That was all they really knew about him. They only knew rumors aside from these facts. In other words, they finally came to understand how mysterious Naruto actually is to them. At this point, Kakashi made the decision to interrupt their thoughts. "Well, now that you know a little bit more about him, maybe you can understand why I'm not going to bother to go look for him." Kakashi grinned broadly as he got up from his chair, bowed to Tsunami for the dinner and dessert, and then ascended the stairs. Kakashi halted his progress and leaned down to whisper some words into Inari's ear while he was still processing what had just been discussed before heading to his room for the night. On top of Konohagakure's Hokage monument, Kurenai Yuhi bowed before the Hokage and said, "Hokage Sama, it has been over 2 weeks and Hinata is not back. May I inquire on the status of their mission?" she asked in a formal manner. The Hokage simply gazed over the village and thought about his entire tenure as a ninja of his cherished village, ignoring the tone of the greener Jonin. After doing this for about 30 seconds, Sarutobi gave a grandfatherly response. Kurenai stood and inhaled deeply before answering, "Please share your true thoughts with me. I'm much too old to beat around the bush. I'm afraid for Hinata, she is still too young and timid to be out of the village as long as she has been. From my understanding, the mission she had accompanied Kakashi and Team 7 on was only supposed to be a week long, and it has already been twice that. I'm worried that the mission might have become much too dangerous for her and it's putting her life at risk," she said with a motherly voice that had a feeling of dread in every word. Biwu ha 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 ha. The Hokage laughed heartily after Kurenai finished voicing her worries. With a smile on his face, the elderly Hokage concluded, "Dear daughter of my village, you are forgetting something important. Once a child has graduated the academy, they are no longer sheltered as children but pushed as ninja, for if they have the will of fire it will burn bright in times of strife. And your precious genin has the will of fire, that is a fact I am sure of." Kurenai was still not convinced. The Hokage continued to smile and said, "I can see the hesitation on your face, Kurenai. I cannot find anything wrong with that thought, Hokage. Sama, it's a truth we all accept as ninja, but I still can't help but worry." Kurenai sighed and lowered her head, sounding almost dejected. Sarutobi answered without missing a beat and maintained his warm smile the entire time. Before turning around and walking away from the monument to Shunshin in midair and heading back to his office to finish whatever work needed to be done, Sarutobi concluded, "Don't forget Kurenai, they have him with them, and he will lay down his life before she ever gets hurt. After all, you should know best, his mother was your sensei." Kurenai bowed silently, grinned, and turned to leave, saying, "Hokage Sama, your wisdom never fails to comfort me." 2 days later, all of the bridge builders are scuttling around like a sweat-soaked army on hot, muggy days. They had a purpose: to finish the bridge by the end of the month. While Hinata and Sakura were on the lookout for any strange activity, Tazuna was continuously followed by the gloomy Sasuke. The girls were startled when Kakashi Shunshin appeared behind them at this moment. "Kakashi Sensei," cried Sakura, "have you heard from Naruto yet?" "I'm sorry, Sakura, I have not. He has not tried to contact me. Just be patient, he will reach out to us eventually." Sakura starts to worry, but what if Zabuza finds Naruto first and kills him, Sensei? Sakura has started to cry and is hanging her head in shame, begging for an explanation. "What if," she asks, "what if I don't get to apologize for how bad I have treated him?" Hinata adds her voice. "Can we please go look for him, Kakashi? Sensei, we are both worried about him." For a few seconds, Kakashi held an arrogant position over the two girls, gazing down at them. He smiles broadly as he finally lets up. Kakashi took out his bright orange book and sat on top of a crate to observe the workers going about their daily business. "You two may go, I'm pretty sure, Sasuke, and I can watch a few builders while you go scour the eastern coast of the island. I'd recommend looking for clearings that look over the sea." Hinata questioned, "Wait, do you know where he is at, Sensei?" Kakashi said, "Huh? You say something, Hinata?" as if he had never heard her. Sakura launched herself in a chakra-enhanced leap, followed shortly after by a calm and resolute Hinata, who was facing the eastern shore and saying, "Come on, Hinata, we have to go find Naruto sooner rather than later." Tazuna and Sasuke made the decision to walk over right then. The other team member asked, "Why didn't you send them after me the day before, and why did you wait until now to send them after Naruto?" Kakashi began, "Because one had yet to realize how much she has affected Naruto's life, and the other may be the only one to break into his shell." He then looked up from his book to see Tazuna and his remaining student. Kakashi laughed at the bewildered expression on his genin's face before returning to his book. "You, Sasuke, may not have realized it, but Naruto is more like you than you could possibly imagine. Naruto, I hope you won't be as averse to your peers as you were with me." Tazuna shrugged, gave Sasuke a shoulder pat, jolted him out of his reverie, and told him to follow them to the opposite side of the bridge, where they were laying the groundwork for the installation of another support strut. In the clearing of Naruto. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Breath with the rhythm of the waves, kid. As they move to and from, your breath will follow. You must learn to move with your environment and flow with your enemy's attacks. Your breathing is the start to reflecting your opponent's attack and moving with their momentum. Naruto was performing kata while sitting cross-legged, simply rotating his upper body. Naruto and his tenet were unaware that a pair of tiny eyes were observing his every move. These were the smoothest motions they had ever witnessed. There was no hesitancy, no jerky motions, and no sense of danger. These eyes resembled a cyclone, and their movements were almost unnatural. Strong, controlling, and untouchable. No matter how hard you try to punch a cyclone, Your fist will only be thrown around by the windy force of nature, as one might expect. At this moment, a distant snapping of twigs appears to awaken Naruto from his reverie and allow him to observe his surroundings. You know, Inari, it's never a smart idea to try and eavesdrop on a ninja while he trains. The eyes of a troubled young man who has been caught widen and make an unsuccessful attempt to hide in the bushes before his location is discovered. The moment Inari looks away from Naruto, he feels the same boy he has been observing for the past 2 days, with a piercing glare aimed at the back of his head and a calloused hand on his shoulder. Naruto went on, the reason being is that they might think you are an enemy and try to kill you. At this point, Inari was sweating profusely because he didn't know how to respond to the older boy holding him. After saying, if you wanted to say something you should have just approached me. I'm here to protect you and your family. Naruto turned away from Inari and walked back to his imprinted spot on the grass, releasing his hand and softening his menacing glare. Naruto grinned and said, well, are you going to come over and talk with me or just stand in those bushes over there? Inari rushes from his hiding place into the clearing and sits down in front of Naruto, seemingly shaking his head. Naruto starts, so why are you here, kid? Inari began defensively, saying, it's not, kid, and why'd I have to tell you why I'm here? At that response, Naruto sighed and looked at Inari quizzically, uncertain of how to deal with the disobedient child. Although Naruto already knows that Inari is there for a reason, he is unsure of how to confront Inari about it. After all, Naruto had never been taught how to handle emotional situations. You don't have to, Inari. I'm not your mother or your grandfather, and I'm against beating up little kids for information. Naruto got up and made his way to the closest tree, startling Inari as he ascended it. About a quarter of the way up, he discovered a sturdy branch and began performing hanging sit-ups from it. As you can see, I'm just going to be training, so you're free to hang around and watch. At least I can watch you now and respond to any threats that are nearby if some of Gado's thugs decided to follow him. Inari asked his question after observing Naruto sit up for a considerable amount of time in silence. Inari looked at Naruto, tears in his eyes and emotion after emotion flashing across his face at the new thoughts in his head and his need for answers. You said ninjas aren't heroes, then why did you decide to carry the burden of a ninja instead of becoming a hero? If you knew the difference, why do you take a stand against Gado when you were going to be killed? Inari asked. Unsure of what Naruto was trying to tell him, Inari finally sobbed and asked, why do you decide to fight a losing battle? Dropping from his branch, Naruto knelt beside Inari. Because Inari, you never know the outcome of a fight until you do stand up to fight, and because I grew up without anyone to care for me, so I have no one back home who will cry over my death. I grew up scavenging food out of dumpsters, getting mugged by my village's people for a crime they say I committed that I have no knowledge of, most of all because I do not want to ever hear or see anyone go through what I had to just to survive. Inari, I have found what I hope to someday be a place to belong to, and that is my team. And I will do whatever it takes to protect that future from being taken from me. Inari appeared to comprehend most of what the young genin was saying as she gazed at Naruto. Naruto could still see the bewilderment behind his tearful eyes, though. Naruto chose to approach the boy more personally because he was still unsure of how to deal with the young man who was crying. Inari, how would you feel if your mother and grandfather died tomorrow for no reason? The young boy's response was wide-eyed and horrified by the idea. I don't know. Inari shook his head negatively in response to the question. Do you think you could take care of yourself? Do you think you would have the strength to move on even if you could take care of yourself? Was answered negatively once more. Inari. These are why we will fight on your grandfather's behalf and protect you, your mother, and him. So, you don't have to think about these what-ifs. So, you can be a carefree child and smile and laugh and have dreams of a bright future. That is what makes it worth it for us ninja. Naruto raised his face to the child. I think it's time for you to go home, Inari. Will you be coming back soon, Naruto? Inari replied as he began to make his way back to his house. Of course. Naruto replied, I just need to finish up something here before I follow you. After wiping away the last of his tears, Inari began to sprint home without turning around. Naruto's face darkened as soon as Inari was out of sight, and he assumed a defensive stance, facing the direction Inari had fled. Alright, whoever has been watching me can come out now. I know you have been here since I called out the little brat. And a woman's silhouette emerged, accompanied by a rustle of leaves from the bush he was facing. A pink-haired girl in a panic yelled, Hinata, Hinata, where did you go? While searching for Naruto, her temporary teammate abruptly ran off. Sakura was standing by herself in a clearing on foreign land when all of a sudden she felt uneasy. It was as though the forest she was in was imitating her inner turmoil. At her feet, a light mist covered the chilly, marshy ground, All of her instincts and training were telling her to get out of there because she would die if she didn't, and a dark pit started to form in her stomach. Sakura decided to follow her gut and started to back off, one step at a time, until she had completely turned around and was running back towards Tazuna's house at full speed. In her panic, all she could think was, "I'm sorry, Hinata." In an enormous tree fort, not too far from where Sakura had been. "Zabuza. Sama, I have scared away the approaching civilian just as you have directed," said a young man in a mask. With a chilling smile on his face, Zabuza said, "Good Haku, now hurry back in here and continue preparing our departure. I'm almost healed and we must get rid of that bridge builder or we won't get our pay." In order to carry out Zabuza's orders, Haku went back to the room and closed the sliding door to the balcony, thereby cutting off the outside world from their base. And a woman's silhouette emerged, accompanied by a rustle of leaves from the bush he was facing. When Naruto saw the shy woman, his right eyebrow went up. Naruto asked the girl, "How much of that conversation with Inari did you hear, Hinata?" Hinata nervously tapped her index fingers together and said, "I've been here since Inari asked you about your opinion on ninjas and heroes." Hinata started to say, "I apologize for listening in, it wasn't appropriate of me, Naruto," but Naruto sighed and held up his hand to stop the girl in her tracks. Naruto shook his head slightly and said, "Hinata, please don't apologize, it's all right." Naruto took a deep breath and scratched the back of his head before speaking to ease the awkward tension that was building between them. "Did Kakashi-sensei send you to find me, Hinata?" Hinata replied, pressing the tips of her fingers together, "Why? Yes, he did, Naruto. We were all worried about you because we haven't heard from you in quite some time. And I was hoping you would be willing to come back to the bridge with me because the mission is still not over." Hinata was able to escape. Naruto agreed with a broad smile that helped to ease some of the tension in Hinata's anxious heart. They both turned toward the bridge and started to jump in the direction of their destination. "When did Naruto become so mature?" was Hinata's last parting remark. Sakura yelled, "Kakashi-sensei," at her mentor on the bridge in a panic. Kakashi answered, "Sup, Sakura? Is there a problem?" Sakura replied, gasping for air, "I'm so sorry, Kakashi-sensei, I lost Hinata and panicked. I need your help to find her. Please." She began to cry. Sweat fell from Kakashi's brow as he glanced to his right, where Naruto and Hinata were standing at the moment, having arrived at the bridge just moments before Sakura. To get the sobbing Sakura's attention, Kakashi said, "Ahhmmm. Sakura." He then gestured to Hinata and Naruto, who were scratching the back of his head. Sakura froze, then quickly started wiping the tears from her face as she turned robotically to see her two peers on her sensei's right. Hinata poked her finger together and said, "If it's any consolation, Sakura, it was my fault that I didn't use my dojutsu to also make sure we didn't get separated." In an effort to lighten the situation, Naruto added, "And Sasuke isn't here to see you like this." When Sakura heard that, her mood instantly changed, which was detrimental to Naruto's health. "Naruto, you baka." Sakura's foot sent Naruto hurtling across the bridge in an instant. Thud. Naruto landed, bounced a few more feet, and then skidded to a stop in front of Sasuke as his body lost momentum. Sasuke reprimanded Naruto for his abrupt interruption, saying, "Well, Baka, it's obvious that you're as weak as ever if you allowed Sakura to hit you like that. I guess all that training was for nothing." With a sheepish smile, Naruto said, "Guess not, Sasuke, but I was asking for that one." He then accepted Sasuke's hand to stand up. After getting up and beginning to brush himself off, Naruto looked around. "You know, Sasuke, if we weren't here for a mission, this country would be nice to just visit and relax. I wonder if this feeling right now is what a vacation would feel like." Sasuke simply stared at Naruto in confusion, wondering how he could be thinking such things at this particular moment. Then he heard the sound of waves crashing against the bridge's tower pillars and the salty breeze and cool ocean air blowing across his face and hair. He starts laughing. "You know, Naruto, you're such a knucklehead and probably the only ninja in the world who would notice such a thing after getting kicked by the women he likes." With a loud laugh, Naruto leaps onto the bridge's rail. Even from behind Naruto, Sasuke could see the sorrowful smile on his face. "You are almost right about that, Sasuke, except I don't like Sakura anymore. I realized during our exam with Kakashi, truth is I don't know what love is, so how can I say I like someone when I'm not even sure I know what it feels like?" Then it hit him like a ton of bricks. Naruto simply opened up to him and let him see a little bit of who he really is, the suffering he bears. Sasuke understood that he should not take this moment lightly, even if only slightly. Either he is breaking and needs to let things out, or Naruto is beginning to trust him. Uncertain of how to handle this new information, Sasuke chose to go with it anyway. I have done nothing to earn his trust, so it must be the latter, he thought. And you think anyone does at first, Baka? Naruto tensed up and turned to face him in a startled manner. I mean, I sure the hell don't. Sure, I may know the love of a family, but falling in love with someone is still as foreign to me as it is to you. Don't worry about it and just focus on getting stronger. Sasuke pauses before turning and starting to walk back towards everyone else. Otherwise I'll end up leaving you in the dust and you won't have the chance of ever becoming Hokage. Naruto's mood completely changed after that, and he immediately positioned himself beside Sasuke. That's a load of crap, Sasuke. I will become Hokage no matter what. Naruto yelled in self-defense. Sasuke simply responded with HMPH. The two boys enjoyed each other's humorous remarks about each other, even though they would never say it aloud. A few hours have passed since Sasuke and Naruto's moment together. They have since reunited with their fellows and carried on with their mission to safeguard Tazuna and his bridge. Naruto, who doesn't like to sit around doing nothing, made the decision to help the bridge's builders. Everyone's day had gone slowly because neither the sun nor the moon wanted to set or rise. Unfortunately, by the time evening arrives, the builders have completed packing up for the day and are all pleased with the progress they have made with the assistance of one specific genin. Sasuke had lazed up on the tall spires that had been built to support the bridge, while Sakura and Kakashi had spent the day in Tazuna's shadow. To keep an eye on Tsunami and Inari, Hinata was sent back to the house with one of Naruto's clones. The temperature was dropping quickly, and the air was damp and salty from the nearby sea. A quiet night, if one were to ask, but everyone was nervous. They were all waiting for the impending attack on the bridge, and Zabuza had more than enough time to recover in the 2.5 weeks since the mission began. All appeared relaxed and uneventful as the night sky grew. The amber stakes fled for another day, and the final builder had left, leaving only Teams 7 and Tazuna. This would not last, though, as a disconcerting mist started to cover the bridge. The temperature had significantly decreased, and the encroaching moon was no longer visible as it peeked over the horizon. Kakashi Hitaki. Zabuza Momochi's frothing voice pierced the forming fog. In a flash, Zabuza and the Hunter.Nin were in front of Kakashi and Sakura, with Tazuna standing behind them, a little alarmed but trusting the ninja he had hired. Haku started, I sense one other Zabuza. He hides up in the towers. It appears as if 2 of their members are missing. Zabuza and Kakashi raised an eyebrow at this. Kakashi was afraid that Zabuza and this fake Hunter.Nin had found out that Naruto was a Jinchuriki. Zabuza was aware of Haku's past and knew that she wasn't bluffing when she called someone a chakra monster, and he did not recall any of the Konoha nin possessing that much chakra. The former Mizuka Gyagura and Kasama Hisagaki, who possessed so much chakra that Zabuza was intimidated, were introduced to Haku. Zabuza asked, "What do you mean chakra monster?" Kakashi obviously improved his hearing because he was also interested. The blonde one that wear the bright orange. At first he seemed weak and average, however I came across him in the woods and while he slept, his ambient unsuppressed chakra was suffocating. The only person I know who I could be compared to was Kasama, even though Kasama still has quite a bit more than him. He clearly has more than Yagura. Haku finished getting a look of confusion from both Jonin. When did she meet Naruto? How come he didn't tell me this? Before raising his Hitai to reveal his Sharingan eye, Kakashi's exposed eye narrowed in contemplation. With his position jeopardized, Sasuke jumped down from the bridge spire to confront the new threat alongside his sensei. In turn, Sasuke told the masked ninja, the dope is still an incompetent ninja regardless of how much chakra he has. After a run-in with Naruto earlier, Haku retorted, a ninja is still a ninja and should never be underestimated. With Sakura in front of Tazuna shielding him and Kakashi and Sasuke side by side facing Zabuza and the unknown Hunter ninja, the 5 ninjas stared each other down, ready to fight. Zabuza said, Haku, take care of the short one, I got Hitaki. Following her master's instructions, Haku pulls Senbon from her leg pouch and throws it at Sasuke, who then returns the favor with shuriken. The sound of flesh hitting flesh quickly drowns out the loud ting of their mid-air collision. Haku and Sasuke began a taijutsu battle, testing each other's skills with feints, deadly accurate punches and kicks, and Senbon and Kunai encounters. Haku and Sasuke disengage after a few brief moments that seem like hours, and gaze at one another while thinking, he is faster than I thought. Before beginning his favorite set of hand signals, Sasuke declared to the masked ninja, let's end with the theatrics. You are no match for Uchiha. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. The masked ninja was startled when a roaring ball of flame erupted from Sasuke's mouth at a speed never seen before. She has only one chance to save herself, so she swiftly removes an ice mirror to stop the immolation ball from entering. Haku replies emotionlessly, "You are not the only one with a Kekai Genkei Uchiha." Haku performed a series of one-handed signs around the Uchiha before reciting in a low voice, "Ice style. Demonic mirroring ice crystals." Gazing at the numerous reflections of Haku on the ice mirrors, Sasuke replied with a broad grin, "Well, this looks like a challenge. Wait, where is Naruto?" Clang, clang, clang. Tazuna can only hear the sounds of steel crashing through the fog. After a verbal altercation with his assailants, the Konohagakure ninja he had hired had vanished into the mist. "I am unable to follow anything," he thought with a hint of fear as the mist grew thicker over time due to the sea encircling the bridge and the lowering nighttime temperatures. He began to perspire and said, "I can barely see Pinky in front of me." Sakura almost sensed his thoughts and reacted to his mounting discomfort. Sakura smiled broadly at Tazuna and said, "It's okay, Tazuna. Sensei and my teammates are more than capable to take care of these enemy shinobi, and Hinata is protecting Tsunami and Inari back at your house, so stay calm and behind me and everything will be alright." Tazuna let out a sigh, relaxed, and gave the young Kunoichi a nod. "Thank you, I will." Since their respective students started fighting and held until Haku imprisoned Sasuke in his dome of ice mirrors, Kakashi and Tazuna have been at odds. Zabuza taunted Kakashi, who simply humped in response before drawing a kunai from his pouch on his leg and assuming a defensive stance. "Your brat may be from an infamous clan, but it seems he has yet to unlock his Kekai Genkei. Haku, however, has shown an adept use of hers since I found her and trained her. Her victory is assured." In response, Kakashi taunted, "I'll give you the honors, demon." As Kakashi raised his Hitai to reveal his Tomo spinning ready, Zabuza replied, "My pleasure, Sharingan Kakashi." As is customary for ninjas, they leapt at one another and crossed blades to start their own grudge match apart from their students, determined to kill the other in order to complete their mission. To her surprise, Naruto told his temporary squad member it started Hinata. Fearing that no one was keeping an eye on Tsunami and Inari, Kakashi had asked Hinata and a Naruto clone to return to the house a few hours before the construction crew called it a day. They complied, and for the most part, the evening had been peaceful. Hinata's only worry was why Naruto's clone had remained and decided to always remain in her shadow. The Naruto at the house is the real Naruto, Hinata found out after a little probing, and he left a clone at the bridge. Hinata started, and Naruto. Why did you come with me in. Instead of following Kakashi Sensei's instructions? Naruto sighed deeply and leapt from the counter he was sitting on, saying, "Because Sasuke and Sakura are being super weird right now. They're being way too nice and keep trying to push me into conversations about myself which I don't want to have." He rubbed the back of his head and gave the floor a slight glare. Before Hinata could reply to her emotionally conflicted crush, Naruto left the room, leaving her alone. "I'm just not comfortable opening up to them yet," he said, pausing briefly before looking up into lavender eyes that were filled with worry and hope. "Hell, I don't even know why I am telling you any of this, Hinata. Could you please forget I said anything?" Hinata thought, her feelings evident on her face. "How could I forget that you're in pain, Naruto? Why can't you trust me? I want to help carry your burdens. You know, Hinata dear, that boy needs help. He is clearly intelligent, and if I can make any guess on what his childhood was like from his outburst earlier, no one ever taught him how to handle his emotions. Kami only knows how long he has been repressing them or handling them in some other self-destructive manner." Tsunami said behind the young girl who was pondering to her. "Eep," was Hinata's startled squeak. "Tsunami-san, how long have you been listening?" Tsunami had to laugh at the now embarrassed ninja, saying, "Since the beginning, my dear. This is quite a small house." Hinata looked at the floor and started prodding her fingers. Her face was a clear reflection of her thoughts. "Let me tell you a story, Hinata." Tsunami started. "A long time ago in the land of whirlpools, before the time of ninja, there was a crumbling castle, and in that castle lived a king from a time long past. He was named Nayamasu. Nayamasu was the king of nothing. He was born of nothing, felt nothing, and owned nothing other than his decrepit crumbling stone castle. Now, despite his circumstances, the one thing his did possess was unparalleled knowledge and wisdom. This, however, did not mean he knew everything. How he came to have such knowledge and wisdom no one will ever know, but the fact he has such knowledge and wisdom has traveled far and wide due to a simple peddler he helped. This peddler found himself stranded on the land of the whirling tides after a great storm nearly sank his meager ship. The fact such a small merchant ship survived at all is a miracle of Kami. However, this peddler had a very sick child at home that needed him to come home to pay the doctor to cure her. Hence why he partook in such a dangerous sea voyage to quickly sell goods. Lost and afraid he may never make it home, the peddler wanders around the island hoping to find any human settlements for help. Much to the peddler's dismay, he found no such settlement. The only building he had stumbled across was the weary, crumbling castle. Something made him want to go explore it despite its decrepit and eerie look, and when he pushed open the mahogany doors he found a lavish and warm interior that has been well taken care of. He followed the grand hallway that led to an even grander chamber. To his amazement, the chamber was quite simple. It had 4 fireplaces, each placed in one of the cardinal directions. And the towering walls were lined with book after book after book. In the middle of this all was a single man, quite pale and frail looking, sitting at simple mahogany writing desk writing another book to go onto the wall. Making the connection, the man reached out and grabbed a random book off the shelf and opened it to find that the pages have yet to be filled out. "Excuse me, sir," the peddler yelled. "This is a book of herbs, and here lists the location and the treatments of several herbs that can cure your daughter and help her live a long life." After asking a few questions, Niyamasu learned the peddler's life story and how he ended up in his castle of nothing. Choosing to assist the peddler, he climbs to the top of his tower of bookshelves and grabs one book from the very top. "All I ask in return is you use this book to save many more lives than just your daughter's, as I cannot leave this castle." The peddler gladly accepts the book and heads on his way. Niyamasu also tells the peddler of a safe passageway to cross through the whirlpools during this spring season. The peddler makes it home and heals his daughter thanks to Niyamasu's book. He then fulfills his promise and travels across continents, healing many ill people. The peddler became known as a great mythical healer who can cure any ailment. One day he is called upon by a country's princess to cure its king and her brother the prince, who have fallen severely ill to a disease no man has been able to cure, but to no avail. No matter how hard the peddler looked, he could not find the cure in his book. The princess was distraught at the thought of losing her beloved father and brother. She began to lose hope. The peddler could not bear to see a country torn apart at the loss of its beloved king. After the announcement that the peddler could not heal him was made, having faith in the man that once saved his and his daughter's life with the gift of a book, he told the princess of Niyamasu and how to reach him. With the last bit of hope in her heart, she set out to the island hidden by whirlpools, retracing the path the peddler took to leave the island many years ago. She reaches the location the peddler described to her, and to her amazement there stood a grand castle, the likes of which she has never seen before. It was more grand and beautiful than any castle owned by any other king or emperor. When she enters the building, she is greeted by the same grand hall the peddler was greeted to many years prior, the same towering room, now filled with many more books, as there was now an inner circle of bookcases surrounding the single mahogany writing desk, and in that desk was a young, strong, and handsome-looking Niyamasu. Different to the description provided to her by the peddler, she called out to Niyamasu by his name. He stops his writing and looks to meet the newcomer's eyes. "How may I help you?" he replies. The princess tells Niyamasu her story and pleads with him to share the knowledge to save her father and brother, the king and prince. Niyamasu pauses for a moment and denies her request because he does not know a cure for her father or brother either. She becomes distraught, but before she can shed a tear, Niyamasu explains. "I am an existence of nothing. I feel nothing. I have nothing to need or own. I simply live in this castle to keep my wisdom and knowledge, which grow in my mind every day. I don't currently know about the cure, but it will come to me eventually. Despite how I appear, I am actually quite sick, so I fear I won't live to see your request fulfilled. My wisdom and knowledge tell me that's because I haven't felt anything for a long time. I am teetering on the edge of insanity and rationality and will soon take my own life," Niyamasu stated with a straight, emotionless face. This fact greatly disturbed the princess, and she decided she would help Niyamasu. She could sense his grief. This is a man who knew nothing about human interactions. In all of his great knowledge and wisdom, he still can't discern other people's emotions. He was clearly lonely. The princess decided that she would not leave him alone. The princess informed Niyamasu that she would leave the island and return before the end of spring. True to her word, she did. Come the first changing of leaves, signifying the coming of autumn and end of spring, 3 massive ships docked on the sandy shores outside the castle. On board these ships were hundreds of the princess's people who were willing to follow her to this new land and settle anew. Amazed and touched emotionally by this act, Niyamasu felt determination well within him. It was new and scary and exciting for Niyamasu to feel something, and it moved him to tears. The princess approached Niyamasu as he stood outside his castle's grand doors, peering at the flood of people moving to make a new home at the foot of the castle. "Why?" Niyamasu asked the princess. "Because no one should have to be alone," she replied. The peddler followed behind the princess, and after the brief exchange of words between the two, he gracefully bowed and presented Niyamasu with the book he once gifted the man. Niyamasu only accepted the book in return after the peddler regaled how he saved numerous amounts of lives with the book and that someday soon he will return to the island so his daughter can come meet her savior. Niyamasu replied to the man saying he never doubted his promise with the man cause not long after his departure Niyamasu began to feel better and look better and the castle seemed to change and revert to its once former glory. Niyamasu chalked this up to his health and castle reflect how his knowledge and wisdom are affecting the world. Many days have passed since the princess brought the people to this hidden island and a town was being quickly built around Niyamasu Grand Castle. The only ones to reside in the castle are Niyamasu, the princess and her father and brother who she brought along the voyage to hopefully be healed by Niyamasu. Niyamasu felt determination once again stir in him and this time he acted. Because of his vast knowledge and wisdom he had suppressed all of his emotions. It was not that he had none, rather he chose not to feel them. Niyamasu out of character decided to research and create the cure for the princess's two family members instead of whittling away doing nothing waiting for it to pop in his head like so much before. Several weeks had gone by and many sleepless nights Niyamasu finally created a cure for the dying king and prince. Quickly he found the princess and gave her the cure. With this you may now return to your kingdom with your father and brother and citizens. Thank you for teaching me something but there must be many still back on the mainland waiting for your return. The princess looked at the small vial Niyamasu had handed her, delighted that her family will be saved. However, she had to fight back the turmoil inside as this man was already pushing them all away. She called Niyamasu a grand fool and for all his knowledge and wisdom he still knew so little. These last weeks the princess had watched over Niyamasu's struggle and attempt to cure her family, the long nights, and failure after failure to create a cure but through it all he smiled and the princess came to love and admire that smile. As did all the people who came to live on this secluded island as they watched Niyamasu's progress from afar. The princess had fallen in love with this strange all-knowing man and wanted to spend her life with him. For the first time in his existence Niyamasu felt confused and a lack of understanding. He thought that the princess and her people would want to return to their homes. Seeking guidance for the first time in his life Niyamasu sought out and presented his questions to the peddler, the only man he came to talk to regularly. The peddler laughed out in ecstasy at the situation. My dear Niyamasu, it seems you still have much to learn about people. Everyone who came to this island on those ships choose to come here and make this island their home. To send them away means to destroy their homes. Niyamasu at first did not understand but took the peddler's advice and went to go talk to the village people. Niyamasu learned about humanity and all of its emotions and feelings and in turn he began to feel even more as well. The people had showed Niyamasu all of the progress they have made in their small town, how they are using the island's unique resources to its fullest. Many of the men in charge of construction came up to Niyamasu to get his opinion on the future plans they had for expansion. One man even came up to Niyamasu to ask him if he was willing to lend out books in his library. Through these interactions Niyamasu came to understand the people's happiness towards building a new future here. With this epiphany Niyamasu quickly searched for the princess. He had to apologize. He found her in her father's and brother's chambers. He stood outside the door and listened in as she was explaining to her two family members what had transpired and why they were in this new land. Niyamasu walked away giving the family some privacy. The day had passed and the family had finally emerged from the chamber. The king was first to come discuss with Niyamasu, to which he extended his eternal thanks and made many promises to the man, none of which Niyamasu had any interest in. He needed no gifts as his castle provided all he needed. He needed no money as there was no place to shop. And he needed no labor as he was content on waiting for the people on the island to develop at their own pace. The king seemed to notice this and made one last offer to Niyamasu. I can see everything I have offered means nothing to you, and judging by your past experience you will not ask for anything in return. I'll then make you an irresistible offer. I will give you my daughter as a means to help you rule over these people and as a sign of friendship between our two nations, well my nation and your town that may one day be a nation. Seeing nothing but benefits in having the princess stay, Niyamasu agreed on the condition that the princess agrees of her own will. The king called his daughter to the grand library where the king and Niyamasu had been talking earlier. The king informed his daughter of his proposition with Niyamasu. The princess only thought for a moment before she agreed to stay. Niyamasu instantly went on his way to make preparations for her stay, leaving the father and daughter to say their goodbyes. The next day had come and the king and prince left with the peddler as their guide to return to their kingdom, leaving the princess in the hands of Niyamasu. To which Niyamasu turned to the princess and asked her for her name. My name is Hinata, she replied. Niyamasu laughed at the irony and the princess looked at him in confusion. Your name means sunny place, he said while catching his breath. You have truly made island my sunny place and for that I thank you. Hinata smiled at him and leaned over to give him a light kiss on the cheek before running away like a small girl. These events lead to the creation of a great nation. The Princess Hinata and Niyamasu got married a few years later and ruled over the island as it prospered in peace. Tsunami realized she had Hinata's undivided attention after concluding the grand tale. Tsunami.san, what is the name of this story and why have I never heard of it before? Hinata asked. This is the story of the founding of the nation of whirlpools, and the reason you never heard it is because it was a children's story for the children of Uzushiogakure, which was destroyed in the Second Great Ninja War. My great-grandmother would tell me this story when I was little, and she was a survivor on the village's destruction. To answer the last question, the name of the story is The Tortured Sunny Place. Hinata received a similar reply from Tsunami. Because it was the only story the Hokage had ever told Naruto as a child, he felt that some important details were missing, but he ignored that thought. Neither of the women realized that Naruto had listened to the entire story and was simply as enthralled by it as Hinata was. Why did you tell me this story, Tsunami? Hinata inquired, still perplexed as to why it had been shared with her. Well, since I see a lot of Naruto in Niyamasu, I can say that both of them are smart, but they also seem emotionally aloof. Tsunami began. It is obvious to me that he needs someone to teach him to change and maybe make a few friends along the way. Plus you two would look adorable together, so please start dating and in a few years from now have some kids and bring them here so I can play with them. Tsunami turned a bright red with embarrassment and almost passed out. Hee 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 hee. Kurama couldn't contain his laughter. Yes, fox demons can laugh too. At his own genius. What's so funny, Kurama? Naruto thought back to the demon's sudden laughter. Oh, nothing of importance, kid. You will know in due time. Kurama cut off the connection to Naruto and attempted to disappear in his cage with a hurried trepidation at being discovered for a prank. Fortunately, Naruto shrugged at the strange fox demon. Naruto's eyes suddenly enlarge with shock, and he becomes extremely vigilant. He leaps from his position and startles Hinata and Tsunami, who were seated at the table and still engaged in light conversation. To her surprise, Naruto told his temporary squad member it started Hinata. What is Naruto's started? Hinata asked, growing tense as she saw how alert and tense the object of her affections was. We must go assist Zabuza and the hunter. Nin, who are on the bridge after being engaged by Kakashi, Sensei and Sasuke. Hinata nodded in agreement, and the two of them prepared to dash out the door to assist their fellow ninja when the front door abruptly flew open, revealing two of Gado's goons standing in their path. Naruto blurted out, well, isn't this a surprise? When he had to confront the two thugs.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.